Hello and welcome everyone to today's conversation on the why and how of coaching for trainers. What we're going to do is a presentation for the first half and share that recording on YouTube. For those of you watching on YouTube, you will see the first half of the program. Then what we're going to do is turn the recording off and move into live discussion. So very much looking forward to that part of it. Getting us started, the agenda for the presentation part of the program. First off, we're going to share some definitions with you. We're going to talk about the why for coaching with trainers and give you some facts and statistics. Then we're going to move into discussing the application of coaching for trainers and actually for other roles as well. We'll talk about the how specifically. For those of you that have done coach training, in some ways it'll be really fun to just revisit some of those key pieces. We'll talk about during training and after training, that application. There will be time for Q&A if somebody has questions they want to ask. The learning outcomes, and this is what you're after. So my job is to give you the information and your job is to decide what you want to take away from it. Ideally, these are your opportunities. So first off, being able to list some of these facts and statistics regarding coaching and training, very useful in conversations you have anyway. We want you to be able to define the coaching skills to use during training, explore different coaching activities to use during training, and consider options to incorporate coaching after training. First off, we're going to start with a description of coaching, and this comes from the International Coaching Federation. They talk about coaching as a strategic partnership, and the coach empowers the client or holds the client as fully empowered to clarify their own goals, create their own action plans, move past obstacles, and achieve what the client chooses. The specific definition of coaching, also from the International Coaching Federation, is that coaching is a partnering with clients, and that is incredibly significant. We think about engaging other professionals, trainers, HR professionals, etc., and we see those professionals as the experts. Whereas in coaching, it is truly a partnership. And it goes on to say a thought-provoking and creative process that inspires them being the client, to maximize their own personal and professional potential. Love that definition, just the way it's said. Alternatively, when we talk about training, the definition of training is the act of teaching a person or an animal, love that that's in there, a particular skill or type of behavior. If we look at ATD, what they do say is a competency for developing professional capability is coaching. So it is encompassed in what they're doing and what they're saying. ATD has a huge focus on coaching. So let's differentiate these two. Very specifically, the trainer is there to improve workplace productivity by increasing knowledge or skills. And for those of you that join late, to let you know what our game plan is, we're going to invest half an hour in a presentation portion being recorded for YouTube. Then we're going to stop the recording and use the remaining half an hour for discussion. So I wanted to let you know what's happening. All right. So the trainer is focused on workplace productivity. They are responsible to the employer, to the organization. They are increasing knowledge and skills. Coaching is empowering individuals to discover and maximize their personal and professional potential. So yes, maximizing what they're doing in the workplace, recognizing it also encompasses them on a personal level. In terms of the difference, for the trainer, all the work is focused on organizational objectives, and they report to the organization. For the coach, they are focused completely on the client and on the client being fully empowered. Which brings us to a definition for the paradox of coaching. Coaching skills can be used in training, mentoring, managing, counseling, therapy, consulting, leading. At the same time, training, mentoring, managing, counseling, therapy, consulting, and leading are inappropriate when coaching. That's our paradox. The beauty of it is, for those of you that do have coaching skills, learn coaching skills, it is a skill set you can apply in everything you do. It's recognizing there are some very specific differences between these skill sets, and using the other skill sets when you're coaching is inappropriate. So let's move into some of the facts. The objective here is to maximize training by including coaching. Let's back that up. The reasons for it, if you will, are facts. So Public Personnel Management did a study, and they said training increased productivity 22.4%. When you do training plus coaching, you're gaining an 88% productivity gain. That's 4 times the impact. And if we think about it, it makes sense. Training is providing the information. Coaching is asking the individual what they're doing with that information, how it's working, how they're adjusting, etc. Very powerful. This was further backed up by a study that was done at Xerox Corporation, and they found that if you do training without follow-up coaching, 87% of the skills change brought about by the training is lost. So what that tells us is follow-up coaching in conjunction with the training makes sense. If an organization is going to invest in training, it makes sense for them to also invest in coaching. You may have seen this next one, very commonly cited statistic, Metrics Global. And they said coaching brings about a 529% ROI. And if you look at the financial benefits from employee retention, you have a 788% gain in terms of your ROI. For every dollar you're spending, a 788% return. It's phenomenal. Fortune magazine put out an article. My guess is that study was part of what they were looking at. And they said the average return on investment is 600%. When you invest in coaching, 600% return on investment. I love this next one, Triad Performance Technologies. This is a less cited, less known study. They looked specifically at coaching with sales managers in telecommunications, and they cited 1,000% ROI. Phenomenal. So Forbes magazine said, do you have a coach? If not, you could be limiting your career success. So now we're bringing it in on a more individual, personal level. Here's one of the research studies that to me backs up what Forbes said. This was done at Amoco, which is now owned by British Petroleum. And what I love about it is they did it over a 10-year period of time. So the longevity of that is phenomenal. And here's what they found. Compared to other managers, those that had a coach demonstrated improved performance, increased ratings of potential for advancement, and check out this number, 50% higher average salary increases. That's phenomenal, 50% higher. And the participants attributed these results directly to the coaching they received. That tells us so much about the power and the value. Right Management said 86% of companies use coaching to sharpen the skills of individuals targeted as future leaders. Increasingly, we're seeing when people are applying for a job and negotiating, that one of the things they're asking for is a coach. Society for Industrial and Organizational Psychology said effective and timely coaching can make the development and implementation of a business strategy less daunting and more successful. So definitely the case is there in terms of coaching, having it in the organization, both in conjunction with training and frankly with HR functions as well, organizational development functions. It's a powerful tool. Here's what we're saying. Training provides valuable information. Coaching ensures the ownership, buy-in, and follow through of that information. Specifically, when you think about our coaching competencies, as I rattle these off, guessing most of you are familiar with them, think about how that fits if you're in HR, if you're in talent development, org development, change management, project management, etc. And think about these and their application when you're training. So very specifically, demonstrates ethical practice. Yes, absolutely makes sense. Now, the interesting one here, embodies a coaching mindset. That's a bit more nuanced. The coaching mindset involves being curious, open, and flexible. Think about the value of an HR professional, of a trainer, a talent development professional, an org development professional, being open, curious, and flexible. And that's a great tool. Fully supports everything we do. In terms of co-creating the relationship, our coaching competencies establishes and maintains agreements, makes sense for us in all capacities, cultivates trust and safety, and maintains presence. So trust and safety, can we have that honest, authentic conversation and know that it's okay, it's a safe place to do that? Maintaining presence, it's so easy to get distracted. And when we learn how to stay truly present and focused on the person we're with, that's powerful in every conversation we have. Communicating effectively is an amazing skill set of coaches that serves in all capacities as well. Very specifically, listens actively. It's funny we talk about this. The irony of listening is that most people will say, yeah, I'm a pretty good listener. And if you ask most people, do you think others listen well? The most common answer is, not so well. So there's definitely a disconnect or a gap there. And it's really easy to start discovering, oh my goodness, I'm really not paying attention. I'm not listening. I'm distracted. I'm focused over here. There's too many things going on, whatever it is. And we miss so much. So when we develop listening as a coach, it's with that coaching present, completely focused, listening to understand while being open, curious, and flexible. And we're listening cumulatively over time. We're listening to what's being said and what's not being said. And we're noticing the energy shifts and the way people are framing things. This in turn supports evoking awareness because now we start asking questions. And coaching questions are completely different than other types of questions. This in turn supports us with facilitating client growth. And of course, people in HR, people in talent development or development, etc., are very much about facilitating growth. The beauty of it is coaching brings in elements that simply haven't been considered in some of those other roles. So it's a fabulous skill set to apply everywhere. Let's keep digging into this. In terms of coaching skills in HR, think about an HR professional being aware of somebody's different personal style and learning style, and thus adjusting to it. And in that way, asking questions based on who that individual is with that open, curious, flexible mindset. Coaching activities in HR can include empowering productivity, advancing careers. In terms of coaching in OD, recognizing thought patterns, the way people are thinking about what it is they want, asking the coaching questions, the open-ended coaching questions, applying some of those techniques in coaching. It includes creating buy-in for change and empowering ownership in what people are doing. For talent development professionals, It's an awareness of learning styles. It's engaging people during training with questions, activities. We'll talk about some of those, and it includes the follow-up for application. So for example, when we're starting a training program, saying to people, okay, take out your workbook, flip it over to a blank page on the back and say, okay, action steps to implement learning, or action steps as a result of this learning. And then all the way through the training, you're reminding them, okay, go to that back page and give yourself an action step. What are you going to do with that? How are you going to apply that? And it's inviting them to start thinking about their own application of the content that's being provided. This is using coaching as a trainer. Another opportunity is the accountability. Of course, the big challenge when we do a training program is we do it, people are out the door, and what is it, a day or two, and most of it's gone or forgotten because they're back into their routines and their busy lives. One of the coaching skills we use is asking clients, how will you hold yourself accountable? How will you keep yourself on track with that? Now imagine asking that at the end of a training session. Literally saying to the people in the room, okay, what are you going to do with that? And how are you going to keep yourself on track for it? Give them the ownership of it. Another application, asking them for the answers. It's really interesting. Oftentimes we feel like, okay, our value is based on us being the go-to person, us having the answers. The reality is when we're answering, how much are people actually hearing? Not much. So when we start asking them for the answers, even if it takes them a few attempts to get it, that's okay. When they get it, they truly heard it and they own it. So asking them for the answers instead of being the expert providing the answers. Asking them how they'll use the information. Other things that we can do, inviting self-reflection. So I talked about having that page where they're writing down action steps. Think also during training of giving them space to self-reflect or even discuss with each other. Okay, what is this telling us? What are we learning from this? How does that work for us? Another great thing you can do is the brainstorming. When we talk about brainstorming and coaching, what we talk about is it's really about getting them to think about more ideas and open up their thinking, etc. So if somebody's stuck, we'll start with, okay, if you were asking somebody else for insight, what ideas will they give you? Or we'll say, okay, if I'm you and I'm in your position, what advice do you have for me? And so there's multiple ways we'll ask to help them get unstuck. We can also do what we call a reverse brainstorm. So the reverse brainstorm is asking them, okay, what's the stupidest, dumbest thing you can do? Okay, now it's a mediocre idea. And it's a way of getting them unstuck and starting to think of different ideas. If we're actually going to ask permission to be part of the brainstorm, the caveat that we have to it in coaching is that first off, it's a true brainstorm. Multiple ideas, everybody's involved, no investment, no explanation of any of them. It's just getting ideas out there. As a coach, we make sure we have at least 3 ideas. If we only have 1 idea, it's not brainstorming, it's giving advice. 2 is about the same thing. You got to have 3 or more, and you got to keep it to a true brainstorm. Imagine taking that to the training room, where instead of the trainer at the front of the room being the expert and whatever idea they give has more weight, it's a true brainstorm process with everybody engaging and giving ideas. Opens up the conversation in a big way. Role plays can be phenomenal as well. And yes, it's a common thing to use role play in training. The nuance is when we incorporate the coaching, really having one person strictly asking questions and the other person figuring out the answers. Ultimately, coaching is a bridge between planning, training, and effective implementation because of the focus on the individual. So let's talk that through. when you're going to have a training program, it's based on organizational objectives. What are we wanting to accomplish? What are the gaps in terms of performance, productivity, et cetera? What are the gaps in skill levels? And the training is designed to address gaps and address organizational objectives. Then you do the training program. So you plan it, you do it, and then you provide coaching. And here's the difference. People walk out of the training room, usually they're motivated, they feel good about what they learned, they feel like they got some good ideas, they go back to work and very quickly fall into the rush and crush of the day-to-day and the habits and the routines and the how-tos they're very much used to. And that's where coaching comes in. Because coaching means asking them, okay, what did you learn? How are you using that learning? What's working? What isn't working? How do you want to adjust? What additional insights from the training do you want to incorporate here? And it's truly holding them fully empowered and accountable for figuring out how they're applying what they gained during the training program when they're working. And maintaining that conversation over time means they begin incorporating more and it becomes part of their new norm. It absolutely makes sense on the follow through. What's important to all of us? Yeah, time for training makes sense. Got to have the information. We've also got to have time for coaching. Let's look at some of the very specific coaching skills that have such a big impact. First off, the people skills. We learn a lot of that when we move into the training space, and we learn more of that on top of what we learned as a trainer when we move into the coaching space. One of the big pieces in coaching is really recognizing individual personal styles and knowing how to flex to them. In terms of communication, we are truly developing our listening to a whole new level. Assertive language, and there's so many definitions of that one. So let me be clear. It is clear, direct language. It is also language that is respectful of everyone. That's an important nuance in terms of defining the assertiveness. And then, of course, questioning. Another wonderful skill that comes out of coaching that makes a ton of sense in HR and talent development is goal setting. It's an effective process that creates change and motivates follow through. And a big piece of it is how those goals are defined. And so we'll give examples for that. First off, in terms of personal styles, one element of it is recognizing, is somebody emotion or logic? Build on that with, are they a passive communicator, an aggressive communicator? And expand on that with the various combinations. Further complicated by how people see other people, because who we are in our own style influences how we see others and their style. The coaching questions make a huge difference. A couple of tips, and these will be familiar to some of you. First off, coaching questions are short and simple. It almost sounds counterintuitive. We think, oh, it's supposed to be this big, profound question. And the reality is the big, profound question interrupts the other person's thinking because they're figuring out what you're asking and processing that question. When it's a short, simple question, it keeps them in their thinking. Coaching questions are forward focused. This is not about the past. It's not about the problem. It's not even about the present. It's about what people want it to be. Coaching questions are truly open to possibility. In other words, we have no idea what the answer is going to be. And coaching questions most commonly start with what or how. Now let's go further. I mentioned some important pieces to goal setting. In coaching, we learn that goal setting is about what people do want versus what they don't want. It's interesting how commonly people focus on what's behind them and how important it is to focus on what's in front of them, what they want it to be. It is equally important that goals be internally motivated. Because if they're externally motivated, it's going to have a short-term impact. Internal motivation supports long-term meaningful change. And goals are to be proactive versus reactive. In other words, that individual's ready to initiate, take the steps, what is within their control, what can they do to move it forward. So how does this apply? It means when someone says what they don't want, ask them for what they do want. Ask for their internal motivation for change and ask what they can control. This can be powerful at the conclusion of a training program and very powerful in the coaching that happens after training. So activities, we've got the self-reflection. What are your thoughts or feelings about this information? How does this information apply for you? What are your action steps to implement your learning? Another fun activity, the question game. And the way that works is every statement made is followed with questions only. So you do a practice conversation amongst participants in the training program. Somebody says something, and the rest of the conversation is based on questions. A variation of this, or in conjunction with this, is listing these questions. And there's extra points when the questions are open and short. This empowers the participants in a training program in their exploration and supports them in applying that after the fact as well, because they experience the impact of that type of questions. Another how-to for you is the brainstorming. So you define a challenge and everybody in the room contributes ideas for that challenge. You can do the reverse brainstorm that we talked about, where you say, okay, we only want crazy ideas. So brainstorming, incorporating that coaching approach and that coaching mindset. Same is true in role playing with people. So in role playing, you invite the challenge, then the trainer can be the person with the challenge and invite the one with the challenge to coach you and see what comes out of that. It's a very powerful technique when they're coming at it from a different perspective like that. After a training program, what can you do? Set up group coaching where people come together and talk about what they're learning, what they're doing with it, what they're going to do with it. You can do team coaching where it's a work team that went through training together and they're talking about their application as a team. And of course, the individual coaching. Coaching after training supports a coaching culture. It supports leaders that coach and makes a lot of sense in an organization that wants a coaching program. Now, to give you some insight on that, the American Management Association, in their global study of successful practices, shared several major findings about coaching programs inside companies, including talking about training for coaches. The first piece they found is that internally based methods of providing training for coaches were less strongly related with overall coaching success than were the externally based methods, even though internally based methods are used more often. So what does that tell us? They're using something that is less effective. That external coach training, I think most of you here have had that, and you're probably aware what happens is internally when they create that training program, it's people that create training that aren't actually coaches. And so it changes the value and the impact of that training for the coaches. Another piece that came out of that is that external development programs, very specifically for coaching, are more highly related with success than internal ones. So that defined finding number 9, those two previous quotes. External training seems to work best. Okay, so let's keep going into the how. First off, when you're going to start incorporating coaching with HR, with training, talent development, org development, et cetera, it's important to do your research. You've got to have, some, for example, some of the statistics, et cetera, because what you want to do is create organizational buy-in. In support of all that, we do have a free white paper we give out. You have access, if you're a graduate, on your coach login pages. You can request it on the website, just fill out a little form and it gets emailed to you automatically. So it's there and talks about starting and running an internal coaching program on an ongoing basis for yourself. Okay, continuing to set you up. For yourself, list the specific facts and statistics regarding coaching and training. So we gave you a couple of them. That's an example of a summary. Define the skills, the coaching skills specifically to use during training. Then you're going to move into exploring coaching activities to use during your training, the self-reflection, the question game, the brainstorming, the role play, all of the things we talked about. Consider your options for how to incorporate coaching after training, group, team, individual coaching, in support of your coaching culture, your leaders that coach, and your coaching program. I'm going to cite a few resources, give you a couple of quick points of information, and then we're going to end the recording and move into a discussion. So that's going to be really fun. First off, some of the resources for you. Center for Coaching Certification, of course, we're very interested in being a resource, as we are at Coach 123. So the Center for Coaching Certification is all about training coaches and training leaders in coaching skills. Coach 123 is a coaching firm providing coaches to organizations, working with you based on your objectives, your budget, etc. Additional resources in terms of information. There's a book series out, and those are available to you. Chapters are written by graduates of the coach training program, so there's lots of great content in them. We have a blog, there's a podcast, and then, of course, these monthly webinars. We are available to you if you want to set up a call or just by email asking questions. Yes, we offer outsourcing in terms of supporting coaching programs, providing coach training, and providing coaches to do the coaches. If you are interested in any of that outsourcing, exploring that more, let me know. We can schedule a 30-minute conversation. For yourself, out of the information we've talked about here, reflect on the insights, intentionally plan for yourself, engage a coach for yourself, and develop your support network. I'm going to actually say, let's save the questions for our private conversation when we turn the recording off and move very quickly into doing that. So I want to thank everyone for being here. For those that are listening to the recording, let us know how we can be helpful. Here's our contact information. And just so you know what you're missing out on our discussion, we're going to talk about packaging multiple services, training, consulting, and facilitating with coaching, how to define the roles, how you plan time for each of those roles, and how you separate the roles. So looking forward to a great discussion. And for those of you listening to the recording, thank you for your time, your attention. We look forward to connecting and being of service.